everyone. I hope everyone had a good holiday. I know that I did. And today I want to talk about, and well, I'm actually going to have to edit this from footage in multiple locations for a change, this Pyle USB to XLR, or XLR to USB adapter. And what does that mean? Well, as much as I love XLR microphones, we've shown a couple of off here. We've hacked one together on camera out of a couple that one visually wasn't what I wanted and one electrically wasn't what I wanted. But XLR microphones traditionally need what's called phantom power. They need 48 volts DC, and that gets provided on one of the pins. And normally that comes out of a mixer. We've looked at the Audio 2000s, AMX7303. I've used Behringer mixers. I use a Behringer mixer on my desk. We've looked at the Creative Sound Blaster K3 Plus, and those are all great mixers, but they offer a lot more features than you need just to get a microphone in. And that's what this is. This is an all-in-one XLR to USB adapter, and it has a headphone out for monitoring. It's got a couple of controls here, but overall is pretty simple compared to a mixer. So let's go ahead and just get this out of the package. This particular unit is branded by Pyle. So we've got what appears to be a power indication LED of some sort. You know what? So there's a mute function. I have a volume knob and then headphone volume control. And the way this would work, traditionally, would be it's just going to line up with the XLR interface on your microphone, and then plug into the bottom. Now this does have the disadvantage of being very large compared to a normal XLR cable that would just stick out a little bit, and I can already see things I wish Pyle had done differently. I wish they had included a right angle USB cable, which is a bummer. But overall, it's pretty straightforward design-wise. Let's take a look at the user manual and see if there's any surprises here. Nope, should basically just show up as a plug-and-play device. Talks about changing your input and output devices. And let's see, 20 to 20 kilohertz, minus 15 dB, 22 dB max, SNR of 90 dB, dynamic range of 100, THD of 0.9. Looks like this should show up as a 96 kilohertz 24-bit audio device. Pretty typical stuff for a USB audio interface. And it says register it to get within 7 days to get a 1-year warranty and a free mic travel case. Well, I don't know if I can actually do that since this happened to be a gift, but I'll try and register it and see if I do get the travel case. Before we... those are little torques. I'm going to leave this intact because I want to take it to the studio and plug it in and use it for a news record first, and then we'll come back here and take a peek at what's inside. I anticipate seeing fairly discrete components. There are 5-volt phantom power injectors that you can get, and there are USB sound cards, and what I expect to see in here is basically both of those in line. The only thing I really wish Pyle could have done differently would have been maybe to have bolted it on in or configured it in such a way that it attached to the microphone like this, which wouldn't have done anything to reduce the total overall length, but would have made it easier in some scenarios where it's on a microphone stand and you have limited vertical height. I don't think that'll be an issue for us. Our stand pretty much is at this height, although I may end up deciding that I need a right angle USB cable and having to replace this one. I do appreciate that this appears to be just under 6 feet. I'm going to say it's probably like a 5'9" per the specs. Is long enough for a lot of applications. You would use something like this. Alright, one of these days I need to find a way to get my desk here to not sink into the green screen. But just for reference, this is our traditional studio mic. We've got the Sound Blaster K3 Plus over here, handling mixing and input duties, which this is a fairly simple setup. I've got one microphone, it's XLR powered, and I'm just bringing it into OBS to combine it with my NDI source, which is our Cat S62 Pro, to record everything together. And then we've got our key for the filter. Functionally, there's nothing wrong with the K3 Plus being here, although, quite honestly, I'd rather have it at home. I'm using the AMX 7303, which is a perfectly fine mixer there, but it doesn't have USB, which doesn't sound like the end of the world, but occasionally there are things that I would like to record that I want to bring sound into our test bench as opposed to just my camera. My options are fairly limited there. I could run a USB cable, not a USB. My options are fairly limited in that particular region, just due to the audio configuration on the motherboard. I could run a cable to the motherboard's microphone in, but I've had kind of mixed results with that. Just onboard sound works, it's nice, it's just not what I want. And then I've got more cables going back and forth, where if it was USB, I could just plug it in and use, well, the exact same setup, and on top of that, do a simultaneous record between it and the camera, which is a feature I'd really like to use sometimes to keep everything in sync when I'm switching between the two cameras. My audio gives me a very convenient synchronization point between the two. So that's part of why I'm as excited as I am to get what looks like a really basic mixer. So, as we mentioned before, this is the Pyle, and it's got a terrible model name here, PDU-SBPP10. Quite frankly, I don't think Pyle actually makes this. There are a couple of other brands that sell the exact same thing. There's even a couple that sell them as a kit of two, which, depending on what I listen to after I've put this in, I may say, hey, you're better off with the kit of two, just from a cost to benefit standpoint. But anyway, all right, that actually looks like it got picked up seamlessly. So I don't really know how I sound right now, because I don't have any headphones hooked up to monitor it. And even then, that wouldn't be a true representation, since what really matters is what gets sent back to the PC. Digitized headphones here are going to give me some idea of what's going on and help me adjust. There's a volume level here that I can tweak, but not necessarily give me the full answer. So overall, just taking a look at this, the height of my microphone is basically doubled. Now, for this particular configuration, that's really not an issue. The one thing that I do wish I had is, I don't know how well this comes through. It looks fine. Is just barely interfering with the base of the microphone stand. It's not a huge issue, but it is rubbing up against it. Personally, I may go see if I have a right angle or a cable just with slightly shorter strain relief. And I don't need a particularly long cable, since it's only going to this tablet here. Although I am happy they gave me, what do they say, 2 meter, 5'9", something like that. Yeah, 5'9" cable, just under 6 foot. Because I'd rather have more cable than I need than not enough. It would be absolutely infuriating if this came with like a 6-inch cable, and then I'm looking at it going, well, how am I going to plug it into anything? This, I appreciate that there are setups, like if I wanted to use this exact stand with this on my desktop, where, yeah, I'm going to need 6 feet of cable to go down under my desk through some of the cable management and then into my PC. So I think they picked a good cable length here, but I definitely would have liked either a second shorter cable if I'm going to complain about anything. Assuming that the audio sounds good, which I don't have any reason to suspect that it... Actually, you know what? Let's stop, and I'm going to listen to this for a second before we go any further. Alright, so I just took a listen, and honestly it sounds fine. It was a little low, but I had the gain turned down in OBS a little bit, so I brought that back up. But other than that, it sounded like what I expect this microphone to sound like. Now, this is not a direct replacement for a large mixer like the K3 Plus, but there are some advantages and disadvantages. This is clearly self-contained. It's a single cable. There's no XLR cabling going to the microphone at this point because it's a direct plug. For a single condenser microphone setup on a desk, this is probably more convenient for a lot of people. There is a headphone output directly on it, which, by the way, is recognized by Windows. And then you have a volume knob on it directly here, so I can see that being fairly convenient for some people as well. I personally use dual microphones on my desk, so this isn't a good replacement for that. And I use dual microphones in my studios. This really only fits in this virtual studio setup, not my actual recording studio where I rip things apart and torture SSDs for fun. So for me, this is exactly where this fits, and this is exactly what I want. This also simplifies if I want to bring it over to my desk for Free Game Friday. I just have this one cable to worry about. I may even go as far as to get a dedicated USB cable for here and then leave one laying on my desk. Now, I said it wasn't a direct replacement for the K3 Plus, but it does have one advantage in that this is a 24-bit 96 kilohertz capable recording device, whereas an older mixer like the K3 Plus, I shouldn't say older, a larger mixer like the K3 Plus in this particular instance is only a 24-bit 48 kilohertz device. Depending on what you're recording, that may or may not be worth considering. In this specific instance, I'm still recording at 48 kilohertz here since that's what it defaulted to, and I'm not going to change that setting mid-record in OBS, and quite frankly, it's just me talking. I'm not going to be the next great big thing on the radio this week. But like I said, so it's not a direct replacement for larger mixers because it is only a single device. Something like the K3 Plus does offer sound effects, does offer dual microphones, does offer quarter-inch inputs for things like guitars, does have more ins and outs, you've got more room to adjust. The only inputs on this at all, or I should say only adjustments on this at all, are I have a mute button, I have a mix, which will change the headphone output between listening to the microphone and the PC, if I understand this correctly. I'm surprised that's not a hard cut, so you can fade back and forth between the two, which is a nice touch. And then a volume knob for the headphones. That's it. Everything else is either controlled in OBS or just is what it is. Physically, I wish it was smaller. It's not a bad size. But if they could shorten this body up, I don't know, an inch, inch and a half, I think it would be a lot more convenient for some people. I would love to see an updated version of this. And what I mean by updated is this model uses, what do they call that? Mini USB? It just says USB powered. The old mini type B plug that you used to see on MP3 players. Not even the micro USB that you see on the K3 Plus or on lower end or some of the older smartphones, the even larger mini USB. I'd love to see this rebuilt for USB-C. That would let me plug it directly into a phone. That would let me plug it directly into some devices that don't have Type A ports. Obviously, you can get a C to A cable or C to B cable cheaply enough, but it doesn't come with one. Those are, for the function of this device, I suppose, minor things. This is definitely designed in an earlier era. It still includes support for Windows XP on the package, although the packaging has at least been updated to include Windows 10. That could have happened 4 years ago still. Overall, I'm happy with it. I'm going to keep using it here in the studio. And if you have a setup similar to this, where you literally have one microphone, I'm going to say this is probably a decent investment. And the only caveat there is that if you see yourself going multi-microphone, or you want to mic up more than one person, it may be worth your while to look at something larger. The K3 Plus is a good example. I personally use a Behringer Euphoria inside my desk. Both of those are good options for just getting yourself some more inputs and outputs. And the Euphoria actually supports 192, 196. Drawing a blank on which one it actually is. Higher frequency and bitrate recording modes than either of these do, at the cost of it's actually less convenient to use as a desk mixer because the knobs are all in the front of it. So it works really well on my equipment rack and my desk, which is great, but wouldn't work as well in my studio, where I want either a fader or a knob that I can reach over and grab on top of the device and keep all the cables behind it, as it were. Just different form factors fit different things better. This is fantastic for this. Would be a great option if you're just a starting streamer or vlogger just starting to get into things. I don't think that a mixer like this would ever inherently be wasted if you did grow beyond its capabilities, because it is really nice to just throw it on one microphone like this, and there it is. This will actually let me neaten up my cabling and basically make this a zero cable space if I remember to charge the damn recording interface. I came in this morning and it's been unplugged since before Christmas and was at 2% battery when I got it to power on, so it was dead. I would have loved to have had no power cable hanging out here, and this will let me get the XLR out. I can get the USB that's in this desk out of the way finally, and just have a completely open space other than what is minimally required to go from the microphone to my interface. All right, that's actually all I've got to say on this. I may pick up some of the other XLR to USB interfaces to give them a go if that's something people are interested in. There's a couple of really inexpensive ones that are just like a cable all in one, and I honestly don't think those provide the phantom power required for microphones like this one or some of my shotgun microphones to function properly. However, I could be wrong, and honestly those are like $10. This is about 45, and honestly sounds good, and I think is worth the investment. There's a couple of other brands that sell what appears to be the same body. That's not uncommon for a brand like Pyle to be rebadging something that they're buying in bulk, and I have no necessary issue with that. Plenty of brands do it, and as long as they're putting the support behind it that's necessary, that's fine by me. Although you may find this exact mixer cheaper from someone else potentially without any real support, or you may find, like I did with the BM8000, or that just because it looks the same doesn't mean that the internals are actually up to what you thought you were getting. All that said, I want to be clear and upfront, this was purchased independently, so as always, I want to thank anyone who helps support Pocketables. It is support like that that helps make videos like this possible, either using our Amazon affiliate links or by supporting us on Patreon. I would like to thank Electrix for providing our opening and closing themes. And finally, thank you for watching.